A cold wind howled through the empty streets as a woman, wrapped in a tattered shawl, approached the entrance of St. Mary's Orphanage. Her hands trembled as she held a tiny baby close to her chest. The child was barely a few days old, wrapped in a thin blanket, unaware of the cruel fate awaiting her. The woman hesitated, tears brimming in her tired eyes. Her lips quivered as she whispered, "Forgive me, my love," and placed the baby on the orphanage steps. Alongside her, she tucked a crumpled note with just a few words, "Maria, born June 12th. She knocked on the door and disappeared into the night. Moments later, Sister Margaret, a nun in her 50s with kind but weary eyes, opened the door. She gasped at the sight of the infant. "Oh, child," she murmured, scooping the baby into her arms. The orphanage became Maria's home. As she grew, she often watched other children being adopted, longing for the day someone would choose her. But years passed, and no one did. Until the Johnsons arrived. Maria was 10 when a wealthy couple, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, visited the orphanage. They were well-dressed and elegant, yet something about them felt distant. "We are looking for a girl around 10 years old," Mrs. Johnson said, her voice cold and businesslike. Sister Margaret hesitated before suggesting Maria. "She's bright, well-mannered, and eager to learn." Maria's heart pounded with excitement. When Mr. Johnson asked, "Would you like to come home with us?" she eagerly nodded. She was driven to a grand mansion, a house far beyond her imagination. It seemed like a dream until reality set in. The warmth Maria had expected never came. The Johnsons treated her like a servant rather than a daughter. Mrs. Johnson would scold her over the smallest mistakes, while Mr. Johnson barely acknowledged her presence. "Why are you so slow, Maria?" Mrs. Johnson snapped one morning as Maria struggled to polish the grand staircase. Maria fought back tears. She had dreamed of love, not this. Despite everything, she excelled in school. But no matter how hard she tried, the Johnsons never showed her affection. One stormy night, Maria made a decision: she would run away. She packed a small bag, sneaked out, and ran back to the only place that had ever felt like home, St. Mary's Orphanage. The nuns welcomed her back with open arms. Though she was technically too old to stay permanently, they let her help with younger children while she figured out her next steps. Then, fate intervened. A wealthy couple, Mr. and Mrs. Williams, arrived at the orphanage one afternoon. Their eyes were filled with grief. "We lost our daughter, Sarah, 3 years ago," Mrs. Williams explained. "She disappeared without a trace." Maria listened, intrigued. "We are looking for a girl born on the same day as her," Mr. Williams added. Sister Margaret hesitated. Maria matched their daughter's birth date perfectly. "Would you be willing to become Sarah?" Mrs. Williams asked Maria, her voice desperate. "To wear her clothes, to act like her." Maria's heart pounded. It was strange, but the idea of finally having parents who wanted her, who needed her, was tempting. After a pause, she agreed. Maria moved in with the Williams, transforming into Sarah. She wore Sarah's clothes, mimicked her mannerisms, and even attended Sarah's prestigious school. At school, she met Henry, Sarah's childhood sweetheart. He was kind, charming, and deeply in love with Sarah, though he had no idea Maria was an imposter. Maria felt guilty, but she couldn't help falling for him. Yet, the pressure of pretending to be someone else weighed heavily on her. Who was she now, Maria or Sarah? 3 years passed. On Maria's 18th birthday, a grand celebration was held in her honor. Just as she was about to blow out the candles, the doors burst open. A girl stood there, identical to Maria in age but different in presence. "I'm Sarah Williams," she declared. Gasps filled the room. Maria felt her world crumble. The Williams were ecstatic to have their real daughter back. for Maria." "Get out," Mr. Williams said coldly. Maria begged, "Please, I had nowhere else to go." "You lied to us," Mrs. Williams spat. "You are nothing to us now." Heartbroken, Maria left. Helen, too, turned away from her. "You were never Sarah," he said. "And I was never in love with you." Maria was alone. Again. She wandered the streets, lost and hopeless. With no money, no family, and nowhere to go, she sank into despair. Then, she met Uche. Uche was a young billionaire who saw Maria struggling and offered to help. "You look like you need a fresh start," he said, handing her a meal. For the first time in months, Maria felt seen. Uche encouraged her to return to school. He admired her intelligence, and over time, their bond deepened. Though Maria was falling for Uche, she couldn't ignore her past. She needed to find out who her real parents were. With Uche's help, she tracked down old records and made a shocking discovery. Her real parents were Henry's parents. Maria confronted them. You're my daughter," Henry's mother whispered, tears filling her eyes. "We thought we lost you at birth," her father added, voice thick with emotion. Maria finally understood. She had been searching for love her whole life, and now she had found it in the most unexpected way. Though her past was painful, Maria chose forgiveness. She found love in Uche. She found family in her real parents. And for the first time in her life, she was no longer pretending to be someone else. She was simply Maria.